The living room felt different that Sunday evening. Maybe it was the way the shadows fell across our wedding photo on the mantel, or maybe it was the silence that had settled into every corner of our home like dust. I sat there, phone in my hand, replaying Sarah's call from 2 days ago for the 100th time. Mom's health isn't good again. She's having trouble breathing and the doctors say she needs someone with her, she had said. Her voice had been shaky, urgent. Perfect, really, too perfect. 5 years of marriage teaches you things. You learn the rhythm of your partner's breathing when they sleep. You memorize the way they hold their coffee cup, the exact tone they use when they're genuinely worried versus when they're just stressed about work. Sarah's voice that day was neither. It was rehearsed, like she'd practiced the words in a mirror. But I'd pushed the feeling down. Paranoia, I told myself. She was worried about her mother. Of course, she sounded strange. I met Sarah at Jake and Emma's wedding 7 years ago. I was the groomsman who couldn't tie his bow tie properly. She was the bridesmaid who rescued me in the hotel hallway 10 minutes before the ceremony. Her fingers worked the silk with practiced ease while I stood there, mesmerized by the way she bit her lower lip when she concentrated. "There," she had said, smoothing the tie against my chest. "Now you look like you belong in a wedding party." I fell in love with her that night. Not the dramatic movie kind of love, the quiet kind that creeps up on you during late conversations and shared silences. She was a graphic designer then, talented and ambitious, with a portfolio full of elegant logos and brand designs. Her apartment was organized chaos, art supplies scattered across every surface, color swatches taped to the walls, half-finished projects everywhere. We married 2 years later, a small ceremony, just family and close friends. Sarah wore her grandmother's dress, altered to fit her perfectly. During our vows, she promised to build a life with me through every season, every storm, every sunrise we'd share. I believed every word. After 2 years of marriage, Sarah made the decision to quit her design work. "I want to focus on us," she had explained over dinner one Tuesday night. "On building our home, maybe starting a family soon. I'm tired of the client deadlines and the stress. I want to create something more meaningful." I supported her without hesitation. My job as a senior logistics coordinator paid well enough to support us both. 60-hour weeks weren't uncommon, especially during peak shipping seasons, but I didn't mind. I was the provider, the protector. That's how marriages worked, I thought. Sarah managed our home with the same attention to detail she'd once given her design projects. Meals appeared on time, bills were paid. Our modest 2-bedroom apartment always felt warm and welcoming when I came home exhausted. We never seriously pursued the family planning Sarah had mentioned. She'd brought up fertility concerns a couple of times, nothing specific, just vague worries about timing and biology. I trusted her judgment completely. If she wanted to wait, we'd wait. If she needed to see a doctor, she'd tell me. Sarah handled the details of our life. I handled the foundation. For 3 years after she quit working, this system worked, or so I thought. Now, sitting alone on our couch, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. The house felt hollow without Sarah's presence, but it wasn't the normal emptiness of missing someone you love. It was something else, something wrong. Her mother, Linda, had been dealing with chronic respiratory issues for years. I'd driven with Sarah to visit her dozens of times, watched her struggle with breathing treatments and medications. But Linda was a fighter, stubborn, independent, the kind of woman who'd insist on cooking a full meal even if she'd been hospitalized that morning. Sarah's sudden urgency about her mother's condition felt manufactured. I picked up my phone, started to dial Linda's number, then stopped. What was I going to say? "Hi, Linda, I'm checking to see if you're actually dying or if my wife is lying to me." The thought was ridiculous, paranoid, destructive. But it wouldn't leave me alone. I walked to our bedroom, stood in the doorway looking at the unmade bed. Sarah's pillow still held the impression of her head. Her reading glasses sat on the nightstand next to a half-finished romance novel. Everything looked normal, lived in, real. Except for the feeling in my gut that said it was all an elaborate performance. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow I'd drive to Linda's house, not to spy, not to catch Sarah in a lie, but to help. To bring groceries, to show support, to do what a good son-in-law should do during a family crisis. It was the right thing to do, the normal thing to do. And if that nagging voice in my head was wrong, if Sarah really was here caring for her sick mother, then I'd apologize for doubting her and help however I could. But if the voice was right, I didn't finish the thought. I couldn't. Some possibilities are too dangerous to fully consider until you have no choice. As I prepared for bed, I caught sight of our wedding photo on the nightstand. Sarah's smile, frozen in that perfect moment 7 years ago, seemed different somehow. like I was looking at a stranger wearing my wife's face. I turned the frame face down and tried to sleep. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, matching the weight in my chest. I called my supervisor at 10 a.m., my voice steady despite the chaos in my mind. "Family emergency, Tom. I need to leave early today. My mother-in-law's condition has worsened and I need to check on the situation," I explained. "Take whatever time you need, Logan. Family comes first," Tom replied without hesitation. He was a good man who'd been married 30 years himself. The 2-hour drive to Linda's house felt like a journey into another dimension. Every mile stretched the tension in my chest tighter. I rehearsed normal conversation in my head, how to ask about Linda's health without sounding suspicious, how to offer help without seeming intrusive. But beneath the reasonable thoughts, a darker current ran. What if she's not there? Linda's cottage sat at the end of Maple Street, surrounded by the garden she'd tended for 30 years. As I pulled into the driveway, everything looked normal, too normal. The windows were open despite the chilly air. Wind chimes sang gently from the front porch. The flower beds showed signs of recent weeding. This wasn't the home of a woman fighting for breath. My hands shook as I walked to the front door. I pressed the doorbell and heard Linda's voice call out cheerfully. "Coming, just a moment," she called. The door opened and Linda appeared wearing a flour-dusted apron, her cheeks pink with health, her breathing steady and strong. Her face lit up when she saw me. "Logan, oh my goodness, what a wonderful surprise. Come in," she exclaimed, wrapping me in a warm hug that smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. "I'm just finishing some apple bread, perfect timing." My legs felt unsteady. The world tilted slightly to the left. I came to check on you," I managed to say. "Sarah said you weren't feeling well, that your breathing was, that the doctors said." Linda's expression shifted from joy to confusion. She tilted her head, studying my face. "What, honey, I'm fine. I feel better than I have in months. My new medication is working wonderfully. Why would Sarah say I wasn't well?" she asked, genuine bewilderment in her voice. The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. "She said she was here, taking care of you, for the past 3 days," I replied. Linda's confusion deepened into something approaching alarm. "Taking care of me? Logan, I haven't seen Sarah in weeks. She's not here, she hasn't been here," she said, her voice growing more concerned. The cottage's cheerful interior, the baking smells, the afternoon light streaming through clean windows, Linda's obvious good health became a surreal nightmare. My vision tunneled. My breath came in short, sharp bursts. Where is she then?" I asked. Linda reached for my arm, her face creased with worry. "I don't know, sweetheart, but she's definitely not here," she answered softly. I excused myself, mumbling something about making a phone call. Outside, in the safety of my car, I opened my phone with trembling fingers. The Find My Device app. We'd set it up years ago for safety, in case either of us lost our phone or got into an accident. I'd never used it to track Sarah before. Never needed to. Never wanted to. The app loaded slowly, each second an eternity. Then the map appeared, and Sarah's location pin dropped like a bomb into my chest. She was 30 minutes away, in a neighborhood I didn't recognize, at an address that meant nothing to me. I drove there in a trance. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. My mind kept trying to create innocent explanations. Maybe she was visiting a friend who was sick. Maybe she was running errands for Linda. Maybe the GPS was wrong. But my gut knew better. My gut had known for days. The address led to a modest 2-story house on Elm Street. I parked 3 houses down and approached on foot, my heart hammering against my ribs. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. Children's bikes lay scattered in driveways. An elderly man watered his roses 2 houses over. Normal life continuing while mine collapsed. I crept around to the side of the house, staying low beneath the windows. The front curtains were partially open, offering a clear view into the living room. And there was my wife. Sarah sat on a man's lap in the center of a cream-colored couch. She wore the same blue sweater she'd packed for her emergency trip to Ka. Ray for her mother. Her legs were curled beneath her, her body fitted against his like they'd done this 1,000 times before. The man was younger than me, mid-20s, athletic build, dark hair. He wore a casual t-shirt and jeans. His hands rested on Sarah's waist with casual possession. As I watched, frozen in horror, Sarah threw her head back and laughed at something he said. Her hand moved through his hair in a gesture so intimate, so familiar, it made me physically ill. Then they kissed. Not the quick peck of new lovers, but the deep, comfortable kiss of 2 people who knew each other's bodies completely. His hand moved to the back of her neck. She made a soft sound I recognized, the same sound she used to make when I kissed her like that years ago when our marriage still meant something. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped it. I managed to activate the camera, pressed record, and captured 30 seconds of crystal-clear evidence. Sarah's face in profile, the man's face when they separated, their bodies intertwined on the couch that was probably his, in the house that was definitely his, during the time she was supposed to be caring for her sick mother. When I stopped recording, the silence felt apocalyptic. I backed away from the window, returned to my car, and sat there for 10 minutes trying to remember how to breathe. The video file sat on my phone like a loaded weapon. I saved it to 3 different locations, my phone's memory, my cloud account, and a text message to myself. Evidence, proof, the death certificate of my marriage. I drove back to Linda's house in a state of odd calm. The shock had burned through me, leaving behind something harder and colder. Linda was waiting on her porch, her face creased with worry. "Logan, honey, you look terrible. What's going on?" she asked. I showed her the video. Linda watched in silence, one hand pressed to her mouth. When it ended, she was crying, quiet tears that spoke of disappointment deeper than anger. "How could she do this? How could my daughter?" Her voice broke. "To you, of all people, you've been so good to her, so patient, so loving." I found my voice, though it sounded like someone else's. "I'm going to divorce her," I stated. Linda nodded slowly. "You have to, you can't. You can't come back from this," she agreed. My phone rang. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, cheerful and innocent. I stared at it for 3 rings, then answered. "Hey, baby." Sarah's voice was breathy, artificially bright. "Mom's condition is getting a bit worse. The doctors think I should stay 2 more days just to be safe. I hope that's okay." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, it was almost artistic. I put the phone on speaker so Linda could hear. My voice when I spoke was ice. "Your mother is fine. I'm with her right now while you sleep with your lover," I said. Silence, complete perfect silence that stretched for 5 seconds, 10, 15. Then a sharp intake of breath. "Logan, I don't understand what you," she started. "Don't," I interrupted, the word coming out like a blade. "I saw you. I have it on video. Your mother is standing right here, listening to every word." Linda's voice erupted from my phone speaker. Pain and fury mixed into something primal. "You disgrace, you liar. How dare you use my health, my name, to cover your betrayal? Don't you ever show your face here again, do you hear me? Never," she shouted. "Mom, please, I can explain," Sarah tried. "There's nothing to explain," I cut her off. "Don't come home." I ended the call. Linda and I stood there in the silence that followed, 2 people whose lives had just been permanently altered by Sarah's choices. "What will you do now?" Linda asked quietly. I looked at my phone, at our house 120 miles away, at the life I'd thought I was building. "I'm going to make sure she never steps foot in my life again," I answered. As I drove home through the darkening evening, I felt something I hadn't expected. Clarity. The shock was gone. The hurt was transforming into something more useful. Sarah had made her choice. Now I would make mine. And by the time she realized what she'd lost, it would be far too late to matter. I arrived home at 11 p.m., but sleep was impossible. The apartment felt contaminated, poisoned by the knowledge of Sarah's betrayal. Every item she'd touched, every corner where we'd shared moments that now felt like lies, it all had to go. I made a list, not an emotional, scattered list, but a systematic, methodical plan of action. By dawn, I'd already made my first call. Emergency locksmith, 24-hour service. The man who answered sounded tired but professional. "I need every lock changed in my apartment. Today, as early as possible," I said. "Divorce situation?" he asked, not unkindly. "Something like that," I replied. "I can be there at 8 a.m., he offered. "Perfect," I confirmed. At 7:30 a.m., I called my lawyer. Actually, he wasn't my lawyer yet. He was David Young, the family law attorney my colleague Jake had used during his own messy divorce 3 years ago. Jake had said Young was ruthless when he needed to be, but fair. Today, I needed ruthless. Young's receptionist transferred me directly when I mentioned the word emergency. His voice was crisp, professional. "Mr. Wright, what can I do for you?" he asked. "I need to file for divorce immediately. I have video evidence of adultery," I explained. A pause. "Can you be in my office by 10 a.m.? he inquired. "I'll be there at 9:45, I answered. The locksmith arrived precisely at 8 a.m. A middle-aged man with kind eyes and calloused hands who didn't ask questions when he saw me carrying garbage bags out to the hallway. He worked efficiently, changing the front door lock, the back door lock, even the storage unit key in the basement. "Keep these somewhere safe," he advised, handing me the only copies of the new keys. "And sir?" "Yes," I responded. "Whatever happened, I hope things get better for you," he said kindly. I thanked him and returned to the systematic dismantling of my marriage. Every item that belonged to Sarah went into the bags. Her clothes, her toiletries, her books, her laptop, her jewelry box, the framed photos of her family. I didn't organize or fold, I just removed. 5 years of shared life reduced to garbage bags lined up in the hallway like evidence in a crime scene. At 9:45 a.m., I sat in David Young's office, a glass of water growing warm in my hands as I explained the situation. Young was exactly as Jake had described: sharp suit, sharper eyes, and the bearing of a man who'd seen every possible variation of human betrayal. I showed him the video. Young watched without expression, then nodded once. "This is clear-cut adultery. In this state, that significantly impacts asset division and alimony determination. Since you've been the sole financial provider for 3 years and there are no children involved, you're in an extremely strong position," he explained. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Here's what we'll do. I'll file for divorce today citing irreconcilable differences, but we'll attach this evidence to protect you from any counterclaims she might attempt. Given the financial situation you've described, lease in your name, all accounts in your name, her lack of documented income, this should conclude within 60 to 90 days, he continued. "What about alimony?" I asked. "With evidence of adultery and her decision to abandon employment voluntarily, highly unlikely. She forfeited any reasonable claim to spousal support the moment she chose to have an affair," he replied. I authorized the $5,000 retainer payment without hesitation. "I want this done as quickly and completely as possible," I stated. "I'll have the papers filed before close of business today. She'll be served within 48 hours, he promised. By noon, I was back home, uploading the video evidence to multiple secure locations: cloud storage, email drafts, USB drives. The Find My Device location history showed Sarah's phone had been at the Elm Street address for 3 consecutive days. Screenshot, save, upload. I was building a fortress of evidence that would make any defense impossible. The apartment looked different now, cleaner but emptier. Sarah's presence had been completely erased. Her side of the closet gaped empty. The bathroom counter, once cluttered with her makeup and lotions, was stark and masculine. Even the kitchenite felt foreign without her coffee mug in the sink, her favorite tea bags in the cupboard. I sat on our couch, my couch now, and felt something unexpected: relief. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't second-guessing myself, wondering if I was being a good enough husband, provider, partner. The performance was over. My phone had remained silent all day. No calls from Sarah, no texts. Either she was too scared to contact me, or she was still wrapped up with her lover, probably strategizing about how to spin this situation to her advantage. I hoped it was the latter. I hoped she was underestimating me completely. Tuesday afternoon, Young called with an update. "Divorce papers filed and processed. The process server will locate your wife within 24 hours. Based on the evidence and her lack of financial contribution, I anticipate 0 successful claims on her part. This should be one of the most straightforward cases I've handled this year," he reported. That evening I called Linda. Her voice was stronger than yesterday, but I could still hear the pain underneath. "How are you holding up, Linda?" I asked. "Better than expected, honestly. Angry, but cleaner, if that makes sense, like an infection has been lanced," she replied, then paused. "I told Sarah never to contact me again. I meant it. Whatever relationship we had died when she used my health to cover her lies. I'm sorry you're losing your daughter because of this," I said. "I'm not losing my daughter. I'm finally seeing who she really is. There's a difference," she answered, her voice hardening. "You deserved so much better, Logan. You still do." Wednesday afternoon, I was organizing files when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Logan Wright?" the caller asked. "Yes," I confirmed. "This is Professional Process Services. I have documents for Sarah Wright, but she's not at the address provided. Do you know where I can locate her?" he inquired. I gave him the Elm Street address. "Try there," I suggested. 2 hours later, he called back. "Documents served successfully. She seemed surprised," he reported. I allowed myself a grim smile. Surprised. Of course she was surprised. She'd probably assumed she could manipulate her way out of this, the way she'd apparently been manipulating me for months. The apartment felt like a sanctuary now. My space, my rules, my peace. I ordered dinner from the Chinese place Sarah had never liked, watched a war movie she would have complained about, and slept better than I had in weeks. By Thursday, the silence from Sarah's side was becoming curious. No attempts to contact me, no drama, no pleading messages. Either her lover was keeping her occupied, or she was consulting her own lawyer and realizing how completely she'd destroyed any legal standing she might have had. I hoped it was both. Friday evening, I was reading when I heard a car pull up outside. I looked out the window and felt my stomach clench. Sarah's silver Honda sat in the parking space she'd used for 5 years. As I watched, the driver's door opened and my wife stepped out. She'd come home. What? Sarah moved slowly across the parking lot like someone walking to her execution. Through the window, I could see she'd been crying, her face was puffy, her hair unwashed, her clothes wrinkled. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Good. She climbed the stairs to our second-floor apartment with hesitant steps, pausing at each landing as if gathering courage. I moved away from the window and positioned myself in the center of the living room, arms crossed, waiting. The sound of her key trying the lock was almost comical. Scrape, turn, jiggle, scrape, turn, jiggle, then silence as reality set in. She tried again more frantically this time. I heard her breath catch, a small, panicked sound. The doorbell rang once, twice, then her fist started pounding on the door. Logan, Logan, please, I know you're in there. Please just let me explain, she called out desperately. I stood 5 feet from the door, silent as stone. Her voice carried clearly through the wood, desperate, shrill, nothing like the confident woman who'd lied to me so smoothly just days ago. Logan, please, I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. Just let me come home. We can fix this. We can work through this, please, she pleaded. The pounding intensified. She was using both fists now, the impacts echoing through the apartment. I wondered if the neighbors could hear. I hoped they could. Logan, please, I have nowhere to go. My mom won't answer my calls. I'm begging you. Please, I love you so much. It was just a mistake, she cried. Love, the word hit me like a slap. She dared to use that word after what I'd seen, after the lies, after the deliberate cruelty of using her mother's health as cover for her betrayal. Her voice cracked, dissolved into sobbing. Logan, please, just talk to me. Just give me a chance to explain. Please. I'll do anything. I'll never see him again. I swear it meant nothing. He means nothing, she wailed. He means nothing. Now, when she was caught, he meant nothing. But he'd meant enough for her to lie to me, to lie to her mother, to risk everything we'd built together. The sobbing continued for several minutes, interspersed with renewed pounding on the door. Then her voice again, smaller now, broken. It was a mistake. I was confused. I felt alone. You were always working, and I don't know what I was thinking. I needed something, she explained through tears. And there it was, the blame shifting. Even now, even in the face of undeniable evidence and complete ruin, she was trying to make this my fault. I was working too much. I wasn't giving her enough attention. I had somehow driven her into another man's arms and bed. The rage that had been simmering under my controlled surface finally broke through. I walked to the door, my voice deadly calm. I was working to provide for you, for us, for the life you said you wanted. While you were lying to me, sleeping with another man, and using your mother's illness as an excuse to spend days in his bed, I said coldly. Silence, complete silence from the other side of the door. Then barely a whisper. Logan, please, just talk to me face to face, please. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We have history, we have love, she began. We have nothing, I interrupted, the words coming out like hammer blows. You, Kai, led whatever we had when you chose him over me. When you chose lies over truth. When you chose to destroy your mother's trust along with mine. But I choose you now. I'm here. I'm choosing you, she protested. No, you're here because he rejected you. You're here because your mother won't speak to you. You're here because you have nowhere else to go. This isn't choice, it's desperation, I replied harshly. Another long silence. Then Sarah's voice, smaller and more manipulative. What about my things? Where am I supposed to go? You can't just throw me out on the street, she said. I opened the door just wide enough to point at the pile of garbage bags I'd left on the landing. Everything you own is right there. Take it and leave, I instructed. Sarah stared at the bags, then at me. Her face crumpled as the reality hit her. This wasn't a fight we would work through. This wasn't a rough patch in our marriage. This was the end, complete and final. "Logan, please, don't do this. I love you. People make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Please don't throw away 5 years because of one mistake," she begged. "One mistake?" My voice rose for the first time. 3 days isn't a mistake. 3 days is a choice. Using your mother's health as a lie isn't a mistake. It's calculated cruelty. Looking me in the eye and telling me you loved me while you were sleeping with him isn't a mistake. It's betrayal. Tears were streaming down her face now. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt you. I got confused. I made bad choices, but I love you. I've always loved you," she sobbed. "If this is what your love looks like, I don't want it," I answered coldly. Sarah stared at me, searching for any crack in my resolve, any hint of the man who would have forgiven her anything just a week ago. She found none. "The locks are changed. The lease is in my name. You have no legal right to be here. If you don't take your things and leave immediately, I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing," I warned. Her eyes widened. You wouldn't really call the police on me," she said in disbelief. I pulled out my phone and started dialing 911. I got to the second digit before she broke. Okay, I'm leaving," she conceded desperately. She grabbed the first garbage bag, struggling with its weight. Clothes spilled onto the landing. She tried to stuff them back in, crying harder now. "I hope you're happy. I hope this is what you wanted." I watched her load bag after bag into her car, making 3 trips to get everything. She was crying the entire time, occasionally glancing back at our apartment, my apartment, as if willing me to change my mind, to call out to her, to rescue her from the consequences of her own choices. On her final trip, she paused at the foot of the stairs and looked up at me one last time. "I hope you can forgive me someday," she said, her voice barely audible. My response was quiet but final. "I already have, but forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It means I'm free to move on without you," I replied. Sarah flinched as if I'd hit her. She got in her car, sat there for a moment with her hands on the steering wheel, then drove away. I watched until her taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it. It was over. The silence in the apartment was profound, not the oppressive silence of secrets and lies, but the clean silence of truth finally spoken. I looked around at the space that was now entirely mine, and for the first time in days, I felt something approaching peace. My phone buzzed, a text from Linda. "I heard she tried to come home. I hope you didn't let her manipulate you." I typed back, "She's gone for good." "Good, you deserve so much better," she replied. I did deserve better, and now I was free to find it. 3 months later, the envelope arrived in my mailbox on a Tuesday morning in late spring. The return address was David Young's law firm. Inside was the final divorce decree, 2 pages of legal language that officially ended my marriage to Sarah Wright. I sat in my Kittrite, coffee growing cold as I read the judge's ruling. The divorce was granted on grounds of irreconcilable differences. Asset division. All property, accounts, and assets remained with Logan Wright due to documented adultery and abandonment by the respondent. Alimony. None awarded. The video evidence had made the entire process swift and unambiguous. I was officially a free man. The legal proceedings had been exactly as Young predicted: quick, clean, brutal. Sarah had tried to contest the asset division through a lawyer she'd apparently borrowed money to hire, but the evidence was overwhelming. The video, the location data, Linda's testimony about the lies. It painted a picture of deliberate deception that no amount of legal maneuvering could overcome. I'd heard through Jake, who'd heard through Emma, that Sarah had tried to move in with her affair partner after I'd locked her out. Apparently, the thrill of sneaking around was quite different from the reality of an actual relationship. "I'm not ready for that kind of commitment," he had told her, according to the gossip chain, suggesting she stay with friends instead. Sarah had disappeared after that. Some mutual acquaintances claimed she'd moved in with a college friend in another state. Others said she'd gone to live with a cousin in California. I didn't ask for details. I'd stopped caring about Sarah's whereabouts the moment she'd chosen someone else over our marriage. Linda had kept in touch. She'd sent me a card a month after the divorce was finalized. "Thank you for showing me the truth about my daughter. I'm sorry for the pain she caused you. You deserved so much better." I'd kept the card for a few weeks, then filed it away with the other documents from that period of my life. The months following Sarah's departure had been a strange mix of grief and liberation. I'd thrown myself into work, earning a promotion to senior manager with a substantial raise. I'd started running again, joined a gym, reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. Slowly, the weight of betrayal had lifted, replaced by something lighter and more hopeful. 6 months after the divorce, I'd gone on my first date, coffee with Rebecca, a librarian Jake's wife had introduced me to. It was awkward at first, tentative, but not terrible. We talked about books, travel, our work. I'd been careful not to mention my ex-wife, not to let the shadow of my failed marriage darken what might be a new beginning. Rebecca and I had been seeing each other for 3 months now. Nothing serious yet, but comfortable, honest. She knew I'd been divorced, but not the painful details. Maybe someday I'd tell her the whole story. Maybe someday it wouldn't matter anymore. Now, sitting in my kitchen with the final divorce papers, I realized something reloginable. I hadn't thought about Sarah in weeks. The anger was gone. The bitterness had faded. Even the grief for what I'd thought our marriage was had mostly healed. What remained was acceptance and something that might eventually become wisdom. Sarah had made her choice. I'd made mine. The consequences had played out exactly as they should have. I folded the divorce decree, filed it in my desk drawer, and got ready for work. My life was my own again. Every decision, every possibility, every future I might build. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely, finally mine. That evening, Rebecca called to ask if I wanted to see a movie over the weekend. I'd love to, I answered without hesitation. We made plans, talked about our weeks, laughed about a ridiculous customer she'd dealt with at the library. After we hung up, I realized I was smiling. Not the forced smile I'd worn for so many months during the final years of my marriage, but a real smile. The kind that comes from genuine happiness rather than the performance of it. I was healing. Not just from the betrayal, but from the marriage that had slowly been suffocating both of us long before Sarah found someone else. We'd been living a lie for longer than I'd wanted to admit. She'd just been the first one brave enough, or cruel enough, to stop pretending. A year later, I would move to a new apartment across town. 2 years later, I would ask Rebecca to marry me. We would build something honest together, something based on truth rather than convenient illusions. But that night, alone in my reclaimed space, I simply felt grateful. Grateful for the truth, however painful. Grateful for the chance to start over. Grateful that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Sarah had set me free. She'd just done it in the most painful way possible. But I was free nonetheless, and I intended to make the most of it.